Good morning. I hope that you have a stunning weekend so far. Ignore the banging. My neighbor is building something on this lovely Saturday morning. It's a beautiful sunny day in Fish Hoek. So he's being creative and made the creative noise inspire you. So I'm not going to demonstrate something today because this weekend, today and tomorrow, you're going to work on creative U-turns. So I'm just going to give you an introduction to this topic, speak a little bit about how using your creative U-turns can be really formative in your creative recovery. And then I'm going to share a reconnect meditation with you that I've recorded before. And then over the weekend, you are tasked to look at your creative U-turns and actually work with them and use them. And yeah, so a creative U-turn is essentially every time you were inspired or started a project or wanted to work with a specific subject matter and then took a complete U-turn and came back. So I'm going to speak about my personal U-turns, but first want to say that the creative U-turn term has been coined by Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way. And she says what happens is that we sometimes have a creative intuition that we want to work with something specific or make something, or we feel really inspired to start a drawing, and then something happens. Either we start being too judgmental towards ourselves, or we were attached to an outcome and we're struggling to reach that outcome in the work that we're making, and then feel discouraged and stop, and then never finish that drawing or that painting or that project or that book or whatever you were writing, or any kind of creative output for that matter. And another thing that can actually happen with creative U-turns is that we are aware that this thing that we're working on feels very vulnerable and very dear to our heart. We have a lot invested into this creative project, and then we open up ourselves too early to criticism. So we show our drawings to someone, maybe a loved one or someone that we feel excited to share it with, and they say one thing, not even necessarily intending it to be negative or discouraging, but they say something that we were not ready to receive, and that's why it's like opening yourself up too early, and then we clap down again and we close up and we crawl into our little creative wallow pit, and we don't do that anymore. We shut down our creativity. So therefore she creates this map that you can also think about, but we're going to do a different writing exercise. But if you want to do something extra, you can do this as well, where you write down in the inner circle, the first circle, so in the center, you write down the project that you're working on, or the subject matter that you're working on. For me, that was portraits, okay, or faces, but I'm specifically now working with my own face, so self-portraits. You write down portraits. Then in the circle just outside, you write down all the people that you trust, that are safe, that are super encouraging. No matter what you show them, they don't critique. They're just like, yes, you've got this, keep going, it's beautiful. You write down their names. And on the outer circle, you write down people's names that give you constructive criticism. So those are the people that when you are ready and when you're at a place where you can receive constructive criticism without it shutting down your creativity or internalizing it as it being a reason why you should stop or why you're not good enough, all of that, you write down their names. And on the outside, you write down all the names of people you should avoid showing your work to. People that have good intentions but are maybe also hurt artists or are not in touch with their creativity, so therefore they'll say probably unintegrated stuff that'll hurt. So like, yeah, but you can only be successful if you paint bodies. Why are you wasting your time with flowers? Or, oh, these flowers are too soetsappig. They're so like typical, and you know, things like that. Unintegrated stuff that can hurt. So then you have a map of who you can share your stuff with. So when you are very vulnerable in a project, you keep that to yourself. You harness it like this special little plant that you're sprouting, the first phase. And then the second phase, you expose it to some elements, but it's comfortable elements. Maybe it's in a greenhouse, if you want to think of it like that. So it's the people that are really encouraging, that's going to motivate you, that's going to affirm you, that's going to keep you going. And then after that, you can open it up to the circle of constructive criticism, if that's something that you're interested in. But you're very conscious that I'm now opening myself up to constructive criticism. I might get feedback that hurt, or that I don't like, or that feels discouraging. But I'm doing this with consciousness. I'm ready. And never you expose your work to the people that break you down. Okay, they're not worthy of of giving their feedback if they're not healthy creatives themselves. And we're not judging them or hating them or anything like that, because hurt people. So they're also just hurt artists, and through your journey into artistic liberation, you will trigger other people that have artist wounds, and they will project their wounds onto you. So they will say things to you that might hurt or might feel like it's blocking you all up again. So then you're very conscious, okay, that person is a hurt artist. I don't have to internalize everything they're saying. So that's just in terms of how U-turns can often happen and take place. If we are going into the world unaware of how we are affected by feedback, and sometimes we do this very subconsciously as a way to block ourselves up again. It feels too vulnerable, it feels too exposed to be so open and expressing as an artist. And it's a very intimate act to share your work. So sometimes subconsciously we do it on purpose to block ourselves. And I've done this a few times where I had a big block around portraits and faces. I thought I couldn't paint them ever, that I'll never be able to, that they won't make sense in my work. I had so many reasons for not painting faces, or not trying to teach myself to paint faces, which is essentially just sitting down and working and compassionately trying and releasing into the process until one day you get a moment of insight, a moment of spark, and then something starts developing. So it is a process, and it feels too heavy to carry sometimes. So I exposed myself to one of the people on my most outer circle, who I knew is a hurt artist, and the feedback she gave me was really hurtful. And then I stopped for months again, and I didn't return to faces until recently. So for today's writing exercise, you're first going to think about what U-turns you've taken in your artistic life, okay, in your creative life. And maybe let's write down 5 U-turns you've taken. So whether that be a project, you had a dream to make an informal documentary, and you got a camera and everything, and then you stopped. And then you can write about why you stopped. So what was the trigger that made you do a U-turn? So you can write down 5 things, maybe also subject matter. So you've attempted to draw bodies or faces before, and then felt like you weren't good enough, and then stopped. Okay, so write down 5 creative U-turns you've taken, and really take some time to sit with this. We're going to work with U-turns today and tomorrow. So if you want to start with your writing exercises today, and maybe making that map of the, what are we going to call it? I don't know what that map should be called, like the safe zone map. Okay, so where your safe zone is in terms of exposing your work to other people, you can do that today. And then tomorrow, or also today, depending on how much you want to work, if you have old drawings that you've started and stuffed in the back of the couch because you don't like them, but you've spent so much time on them, you didn't throw them away, they're still there. They're like inactivated artworks, inactivated expressions. I want you to get them out and work back into them. Employ the techniques I've shared with you in this week. So stipple lines, contour lines, flat planes of color. The greatest thing to do when you are precious about an artwork and it's not going anywhere, so it hasn't reached the sweet spot, you're not happy with it yet, but something is happening there and you don't know what it is and you're stuck, is to dump paint on it. And maybe just a section of it even. Like I sometimes do this with eyes, where if I struggle with the eyes and getting them to just like sit on the same place, or the one eye looks a bit wonky or something, I dump paint on it, I let it dry, and I work back into it. So do something disruptive. to activate those spaces, those stuck and stagnated spaces again. So that's the first thing. Work back into projects that you've left behind. Okay, first prompt. Second prompt. If there is a subject matter that you are dying deep inside to try out, but you feel like you are not good enough, and you've tried before, like with faces or hands, or anything that seems complex to you, that's too advanced to you, sit today using again maybe the blind contour drawing or the contour drawing or the tracing or the feeling of the maybe you're working with your hand and you're rather feeling your hand and you're connecting first with the lines on the hand and then work on the outside and the form of it. Find an in and a playful, explorative, non-attached, just because it's fun in. Don't attach too much because this is now the thing that you want to do. And if you are stuck and you're only starting to work with your U-turns again, it might take some time. So work with that perspective and that wisdom that it's going to take a little bit of time, and you just have to return and you just have to keep going, and you are going to crack through. I am a testimony of this. I did not paint faces, and now I have a whole series of faces paintings that I've made over the course of the last 3 months, and I love them. And now, as quickly as I could conjure a landscape in the past, I'm able to do with a face. The other day in one of my classes, I was so astounded by my progress and so grateful that I committed to continue with this and unblock myself and not do a U-turn again with faces, because I could explain to the class in a few minutes how to do the basic structure of a face, just from intuitively studying it. I didn't go through books, I didn't do YouTube tutorials, I sat with a mirror, I sat with my face, I did a lot of blind contour drawings where I don't look down, just studying the form. Then I found ways to make it easy for me by using contour lines to build up the form, using flat planes of color to work with shadow. So find your in that's going to make it. So after I wrote down that list, I actually I wasn't specifically focusing on ticking all of them off, except for faces. I really consciously, deliberately went into exploring faces and to unlearn this block that I had around it, and to be conscious of not taking a U-turn again. But the other things that I wrote down was like, I started performing informal performances in my house during COVID, and then stopped because I didn't get the feedback that I wanted, and I wanted people to partake more, but it was a Zoom performance and people didn't log on as much as I wanted to. So I felt I internalized the feedback in the form of people attending the work as if the work was valuable or not. And that's also something that sometimes you just need to do it for yourself. And I then decided, okay, I'm going to try performances again, and maybe now, like in the format of an informal small COVID wedding, I'll do small performances at my house. And then collaborated with a friend, and we did a performance, and it was beautifully attended. And I felt, because I didn't have that attachment to how many people are going to come, I was free, and I had reunited myself with a part of me that really wanted to perform. Okay, so it can be a really rewarding process, and once you've written it down, it's almost like subconsciously you find opportunities, and the universe also sends you opportunities to do these things again and to work through them. So I'm not going to check in with you tomorrow. I've given you the exercises for today and tomorrow. Another thing that you can do over the weekend, if you are in a very creative space and you have a lot of time, is to work back into the drawings that you've made thus far. If there's any of them that you don't like, maybe add some collage, add some more layers, maybe cover it completely, just leaving one little section that you love. Work into your drawings, return to your creative space. It's a weekend now, so hopefully you have a lot of time to play. And then I wish you a very inspired weekend, and I hope to see some images soon. If you are taking pictures, like I said in the one email I sent, a big part of healing yourself creatively and getting in touch with your inner artist is being seen. And I'm a safe person to share it with. I'm not going to give you any feedback. I'm not going to criticize you. I'm not going to judge you, because every single expression, I know, every single expression from your deepest creative part is so brave. It's such a courageous act to show up for your creativity and do something, and just do your best, and take that for what it is, an act of bravery, and be kind to yourself. Okay?